Hey, what's up guys? My name is Kelly and welcome back to Adventure Built. Today I'm installing over 600,000 candela of lighting in my 2020 Tacoma, all from Diode Dynamics. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. I'm sure you're saying to yourself, oh my God, there's a lot of lighting, and it really is. This is going to be every light, pretty much every light in my entire truck. I actually ended up also getting reverse lights, which I've already installed in the rear bumper, my At the Home Fabrication rear bumper. This is the rest of the lighting. And there is a reason why I went with one company for all my lighting, and the reason is continuity. One, I want all of my lighting to look the same, and two, I really wanted to go with Diode Dynamics because I met these guys at SEMA and their lights are amazing. And most, if not all, of their stuff is manufactured and produced in the USA, which is really cool. All right, I'm gonna go through really quick what I got, and then we'll start the install. First off, on the very top of the Prinsu rack, I got the 42-inch light bar. I got the 30-inch light bar to fit inside of the C4 Fab hybrid front bumper. Also, to complement the 30-inch light bar in the bumper, I got the SS3, and I got 2 sets of amber for the outside inside the bars, and then I got another set of white driving lights of the 2-inch pods on the outside as well. And you'll see it all how it goes in. It'll be very nice. And I also got a set of ditch light brackets and the 2-inch LED pods for the ditch lights. Now there are 3 levels of lighting for the LED pods. They're Sport, Pro, and they have a new line out called Max. And they obviously drastically increase in output of lighting and price. I went with the Sport level on all of these because I was buying so much and they were already so expensive as it was. This right here on the table is almost $2,000 worth of lighting. And I know that's a big pill to swallow, but this is actually my Christmas present for my wife. So thanks, babe. All right, let's get going. And we're starting with this big boy, the 42-inch of the Prinsu rack. So I took the light bar up to the Prinsu rack, and it's just a little bit too long. And what that is these cutouts for the Prinsu rack. They're made for like the Baja design lights, not necessarily Diode Dynamics specific. And the way they measure out their distance is just a little bit different. Not a huge deal. I'm just gonna have to cut the Prinsu rack, the cover plate just a little bit just to recess it. The distance is 42.5 inches, and I need 43.25. So I need, I don't know, a ½ inch on each side, so not a huge deal. That will give me plenty of clearance to get that up there with no issues. And for mounting hardware, I'm using a combination of the stuff I got from Prinsu and also from Diode Dynamics. So it's kind of a mix of the both. It's the bracket from the Prinsu and all the hardware itself from Diode Dynamics. I got the little piece cut out. I mean, it's a ½ inch wide and just the length of it. I kept the same form, even though I'm not a huge fan of that Prinsu very squared off cutout, but it works for the light bar, so we're going with it. I'm gonna cut the other side and then clean everything up, paint the edges, and put this light bar in. Before I touch up the paint on the cuts that I made, I'm actually going to slide in the receiving bolts to the brackets into the Prinsu rack. The end bars don't have the little cutouts to be able to slide these in with it on there. So I'm gonna have to pull the bracket kind of off to the side a little bit, slide all 4 of these bolts into there, and put it back on. After putting the light bar up there, I realized that these mounting brackets from Prinsu are actually very silver, and you can definitely see the difference between the black rack, the black bar, and then the silver brackets. So I'm gonna paint these, and then we'll come back. Now we're gonna start on the ditch lights, and these are a newer style. These are the SSC2 Sport Combo Beam, and this is really cool. So the way I'm gonna have it set it up as a ditch light is the middle part of the light. This side here is going to be a really thrown light. It's gonna be the light that actually penetrates and goes further in the distance. And then on the outside here is going to be like a floodlight. So they call it a combo because it's a driving light and a floodlight. And the flood is going to give me that like peripheral side ambient light so that I can see things a little bit closer in. And of course, a ditch mount kit comes with brackets. Let's begin. These Diode Dynamic C2 pods are directional in the way they mount they have to mount with the bracket at the bottom. In order to get our driving light and fog light to swap, we're actually gonna have to pull this housing off, flip it around, and put it back on. I learned from doing Trev's ditch lights that if you actually install the light before you put it into the truck, it's a lot easier for you to actually get the light onto the bracket. The clearances are very tight once you get this onto the hood. So what I'm gonna do is actually pre-assemble this and put it on the bracket for the driver's side. The basic process is you slide the ditch bracket in from the bottom. You remove the front bolt, you attach the ditch bracket, kind of tilt it to the side with that front bolt. You want to make sure that you don't have both bolts loosened at one time, because then the hood will shift, which will cause a misalignment, which is a bad day. So what we're going to do is just loosen the front bolt, take it off, put the bracket in, put the bolt back in, snug it down really tight, but not so much you can't move it. And then we're just going to slide it over, index it in, bolt it all down, should be good to go. These bolts are a 12mm socket. You could tell that as I was sliding that bracket over, I noticed that the front bolt, it was just getting more loose because of the angles. So as I slid it over, I just kept tightening it up. One thing you don't want is slack on that front bolt when it's the only bolt holding that side of the hood on, because the last thing you want to do is a misalignment issue with your hood. That'd be a bad day. So like I said, I slid it over and just kind of tightened it as I went, and everything went, I think, okay. Let's check the alignment now. All good. And you can see right here how close this bottom bolt is to the paint. This is exactly why we pre-assembled it on the bench top. First one went in great and it looks awesome. Those things are just really cool. And the second one goes in the same as the first. I've got the light bar brackets painted and assembled, and they look way better than they did when they were all shiny silver. It's time to go in. Now I'm just making sure it's all centered before I tighten it down. I dig it. Yeah, this thing is really coming along. Just the color difference, the amber up there on top of the rack, badass. Now that we have the light bar and the ditch lights mounted, we're gonna begin the wiring. Beginning with the light bar, in the kind of planning phase of me putting this up here, I on purpose put the extension cable, the power cable, off on the driver's side. That way it can go down the driver's side window channel and into the Voswitch, which also happens to be on the driver's side. So try to keep those in mind when you're planning out how your lights are going to go for the end result of actually wiring them up, and for the easiest way to make that happen. So I'm going to tuck the power cable into the window channel and begin the wiring. Wiring for the light bar should be very straightforward. It's just a positive and a negative, and this plug here goes into the wiring harness that comes out right behind the ditch light. Now we're gonna plug this in to get our wire lengths. The positive is gonna go to the Voswitch, which is right here. The negative is going to our distribution block, which is right here. Now, wiring up your lights is really going to be very individual depending on your application. I happen to have the Voswitch, which makes wiring up accessory lights super easy. I'm going to do the negative first, which is going into my distribution block right here. This distribution block is grounded right into the main ground of the battery, so I know it's going to be a really good ground. And basically every ground off the Voswitch runs to this distribution block right here. And Diode Dynamics recommends using at least a 16 gauge wire, and for the light bar, because it does run so much, it's going to have a pretty big draw compared to the other smaller lights. I'm using a 14 gauge. I've got the lengths I want cut, and now I'm going to unplug it from the block here and take it to the workbench to make my connections. I've got the harness connected to the wires, and I will have the all of the tools I use to make these. I have gone through every cheap tool out there, and I finally spent a little bit of extra money on some fairly, not high-end, but higher-end crimpers and wire strippers, and they just make life so much easier, along with these higher quality butt connectors or inline connectors. They just make things so much easier. I'll put all of that in the description below. Go check that out. It's worth spending a little extra money to have stuff that's gonna work and work really well. All right, let's get this stuff plugged in, and then we're gonna kind of loosely route the wires. Now I'm not just gonna throw these wires in here, I actually have a plan. So when I wire my ditch lights, the only lights that are gonna come from the top are going to be the light bar and the ditch lights. They're coming down towards the Voswitch. The other lights are in the front bumper, which are gonna come up into the Voswitch. So I'm working kind of on this section here first to come down, and I kind of want to make a singular loom out of this. So I'm kind of have a master plan here when I do this. I'm not just throwing wires in here. So right now I'm gonna loosely put these wires in and then start working on the ditch lights. I'm gonna pause the big light bar and switch my attention over to the passenger side ditch light. Now I'm basically going to take this light and I'm gonna run it and connect it into the driver's side since everything is on the driver's side of the vehicle. So now I'm going to run 16 gauge wire across the truck to the driver's side. You'll notice the C2 pods have 3 wires, a red, a black, and a blue. And this blue wire runs an accessory backlight, and you'll see what that's all about soon enough. For the blue wire, I had to use black. I used a different color connector so that I knew which one was which. However, it's just, I need to mark it, so I'm just gonna basically find the end of it and mark it with some blue tape. I've also got some very inexpensive wire loom, and this is the closed stuff. This is not the quality stuff. This is a less expensive, but this is going to be just one single strand, so I'm going to use this to wire up this passenger side ditch light bracket. I'm definitely not a huge fan of this type of wire loom. The longer the runs, the harder it is to get into the loom. You kind of have to stretch out the bottom part here as it feeds through. I'm gonna connect my awesome wiring harness into the passenger side light, and that's gonna connect directly into the driver's side light. I found a little pass through right here where I can actually pull the wiring harness from. I don't want this to interfere with the latch system at all. However, if I can get it routed around and down through here, it'll be completely out of the way. Right now, this entire loom is kind of below the engine, firewall line here. And just basically, I'm gonna route it along this main wiring harness that goes all the way over to here. And I want these 2 wires to come down. Obviously, the short ends of the driver's side ditch light have to meet up with this, and I want that connection to be down under the firewall here, not really wide out in the open. It'll just be kind of a big clump of mess, and I don't want that. So I'm actually going to make that connection down below here. I've got my length. I'm gonna make all 3 wires the same length over at the bench. Here's the driver's side wiring harness. I just love wrapping these wires with wiring harness loom. It just makes it look so nice and stock. I just pulled out a pull tab on that side. It's gonna help me get those wires through a lot easier. And remember, on the closed wiring loom, it's easier to push from the bottom than it is to pull from the top. If you pull from the top, it's like a Chinese finger puzzle that wants to tighten. And I always put a piece of heat shrink tubing on the end, because you can see the ends of the wire wrap, they tend to fray. So I put this all the way at the bottom and all the way at the top. That way it won't fray and it keeps it nice and tight. I've gotten the wires pulled through, and I think I'm just gonna hook up the light bar initially. The way I did the wiring, I don't have to worry about one loom. It's basically 2 smaller looms. So not a huge issue. It's gonna be all hidden behind the Voswitch plate and kind of follow along the firewall underneath this plate. So I'm gonna do the negative first and then do the positive. Now I'm gonna use a small ring terminal to connect it to the distribution block. Now for the positive line, I'm actually going to wait and do these all at one time. For the Voswitch, it's easier to work in clumps of wires than singular wires. So I'm gonna hold this for last. I'm also gonna mark it with a piece of tape so I don't lose track of it. So I'm basically going to join these 2 ditch light cables here and then run them into one wire into the Voswitch and into the negative. So I've connected both negatives, positives, and the accessory switch for the ditch lights, gone from 2 out into 1. Now I have to hook up the single line, and then it's gonna be a ground, the negative, and then of course the accessory switch we'll take care of later. And I'm again marking the ditch light power cable, and now we're going to route it down and through. All right, it's time to wire up the light bar and the ditch lights into the Voswitch. Now remember, have a plan for this. I've only have 8 switches, so the way I'm working all my switches are I'm going 1 through 8 top to bottom. So it's the 1 is light bar, 2 is ditch lights, and then 3 is going to be the small light bar in the bumper, and then 4 the pods, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna start with the light bar, and that's gonna be number 1. As you can see, I'm keeping the tags on these wires so I don't confuse which one is which. This is the light bar, this is the ditch light. I'm wiring these two together because you have to remember the Voswitch is a water resistant, almost waterproof type setup. So all these connector entry points are set up as a waterproof connection. So when you put wires into these connectors, you have to put all the caps on over the wires. So this cap goes on. When you pull this out, you got to pull 2 plugs out, and these are the waterproof plugs. So we're going to pull 2 of these out and then push the wires through. Even with the wires through the waterproof housing, you can easily identify with the tape marking which wire is which, just keeping them straight. Now that we have the cap on, we can now put the connections on. I want to make sure that I grab the right wire. So this is number 1 light bar. So I'm going to pull that connector in first and all the way through. Now, I'll be honest, there is not a ton of wiggle room in here, but the more compact the system is, the more compact the installation is going to be. Okay, number 1 is in. Now we're going to be working on number 2 right here. Now all we have left to do is push the waterproof connection back on and screw it on. All right, that's pretty much it. The positive is connected into the Voswitch, the negative is connected into the distribution block. Let's wrap this up and test it out. All right, let's see if they work. Oh, hell yeah. Oh yeah, they definitely work. So the lights work awesome, and my favorite part, putting on the stickers. All right, we're moving on to installing all of the lights on the C4 Fab hybrid front bumper, which again is gonna lead to a little issue with the front light bar. This is a 30-inch Diode Dynamic light bar. However, they measure 30 inches from the edge of the light to the edge of the light bezel, not the overall length of the bar itself. In the front bumper, I only have 31.5 inches bracket to bracket that I have to work with. However, with the Diode Dynamic hardware, these feet, when they're faced outward, they actually end up being 32.5 inches. So I'm 1 inch wide. So I'm actually gonna have to orient them with the feet facing inward, which won't allow me to use the pivoting lock here, but that's okay. I'll just make these nice and tight and they won't go anywhere. Now that I know the light bar is gonna fit, I'm gonna have my wife come out and I'm gonna pull the bumper off. Unfortunately, I've had these lights ordered a long time ago, but they didn't come in when I had the bumper in, and I had waited a couple months and I just couldn't wait any longer. So now the bumper's on, and of course, after the winch and bumper were installed, the light showed up like 2 weeks later, which is obviously what would happen. So now I have to pull the bumper and the winch off to get the light bar in, which is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but at least I know it's gonna fit now, so the wife's gonna come out and give me a hand with that. Well, that's cool. I thought the camera was recording, however it wasn't. You didn't miss a whole lot. It was just a lot of banging my knuckles trying to get those bolts in, but I finally got the bracket aligned and straight, and it looks awesome. Like, this is just coming along. I wouldn't say fast, but it is coming along, but it looks amazing. All right, I'm gonna take a break for the rest of the day. I'm gonna put the bumper back on. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Did I mention that it is summertime in Arizona? It's monsoon season, so it's 40% humidity and 106 degrees outside, and it's 12:40, and I am just devastated. I've been up since 5, actually been working since 5, been up since 4:30. So this is gonna have to wait till tomorrow. Before I wire up the light bar, we have to install the pods on each side. There's 3 per side, so we have to do a little pre-assembly. Starting on the outside, working our way in, these are the 3-inch SS3 driving lights. These have 53,500 candela, or 1,300 lumens, and these are going to go on the outside of each series of 3. Okay, I lied. This is actually going on the inside of the bumper, so it's going to go inside, middle, and then outside. And this is the driving light, which is going to be the higher lumen, higher candela, and it's going to push light a lot further. So I want this the most straight on to my driving experience. So this basically, the way I mounted it was the plug is going to be closest to the bracket itself, and it's just basically going to hang on the tabs that are pre-welded onto the bumper. And I'll be using the factory mounting hardware for the whole thing. And tighten it down with a 13mm wrench. First one's on, let's get the rest on. Oh damn, I'm good. Man, these lights look amazing. I cannot believe how good adding lights to the C4 Fab hybrid bumper just sets this whole thing off. It looks fantastic. All right, let's get them wired up. So here's my plan of attack on how I'm gonna wire these lights up. The light bar is obviously gonna be on its own switch, and then working on the pods, it's gonna be this pod and this pod is going to be on its own switch, and then the middle one is going to be on a separate switch. The reason for that is this is a driving light, this is a driving light, and this is a fog light. So I want to be able to have both driving lights on for that good long throw, or just a fog light if I actually am in fog and I just need right in front of me light, something to kind of diffuse and get underneath that fog. That's what it's for, so it'll be on its own switch. When I wire these up, I'm gonna wire them just with a bare wire, and then I'm gonna go back with an open-sided wire cover loom deal, and it is going to clean it up and make it look nice and factory. Starting with my 16 gauge wire, I'm basically just gonna get a run from passenger side to driver's side, because everything works off the driver's side. And I'm gonna take this length and I'm gonna make a loom. I'm gonna work on the fog light first, just because it's a single light, it's gonna be easier, and then the other 2 lights should be very similar, just doubled up. So I'm going to make another red, so I have a positive and negative of this, and hook it together. All right, so I have this end, which is the passenger side light. This end right here is on the driver's side light. However, I don't really want to just wire these 2 together. If I were to pull the bumper off, this goes through the grill, and then I'll have to cut this, and don't really want to have to rewire this every time I pull the bumper off, which won't be very often, but if I have to do light maintenance or winch maintenance or something else, I really don't want to have to cut this. So what I'm going to do is I bought these waterproof, just positive negative connectors, and these are actually really quality. I use them all over the rear bumper, and I don't think I used them on the front bumper, but I know I used them elsewhere in the truck, and these are really high quality. I will link these in the description below along with everything else I've used to make all these electrical connections, but these are quality, so I'm going to use them. Before I hook these 2 together, I'm actually going to take this 14 gauge and make a run of this from here all the way to the Voswitch. So now when I make the connection into the fog light, I'm going to hook the main positive and negative. They're going to go to the Voswitch and the ground into the connection. Connections are all made, everything looks nice and good. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I do the heat shrink as soon as I make the connection. After you crimp these wires, if you pull really hard, you can pull these wires out. However, as soon as you heat shrink it in, it locks that in. The heat shrink melts to the wire itself, and you will not be able to pull these apart. I mean, unless you were to pull all your weight into it, you're not gonna get these apart. So now I'm gonna run the wires up to the Voswitch and the negative, and I have a very specific way I'm gonna route each wire. This is where the main positive and negative to the winch go through, and I put a piece of edge trim along this edge here to protect the wiring, and all the wiring is going to go right through this big hole here, and it's going to run up the side of the fender right to the Voswitch and the negative. The fog lights are done, and now I'm moving on to the outside driving lights. Now these are going to be the exact same type and style of connection, except all the connections are going to be doubled up. However, there is one other line. These smaller C2 pods have a backlight function that's really, really cool, and we're gonna wire that up in a little bit different way. We'll get to that in a minute. Let me show you really quick what I did here. I doubled these wires up into another connection and then ran one single wire across to the driver's side. It runs through underneath the grill on top of the bumper, crosses over the winch out onto the driver's side. Once on the driver's side, it comes out as a single line where I split it into obviously a connector so I can disconnect it for maintenance, and then I split it into the driving light on the inside and then onto the driving light on the outside. And I split that into a 14 gauge line that is negative in power to the Voswitch. Now before I tap into the Voswitch with the fog and driving light, I'm actually going to finish wiring up the light bar that's in the center of the C4 fab hybrid bumper right in the middle here. Now this is only a short run, maybe only a couple feet, and it's only a positive negative. Should be pretty quick. So I know this looks like just a mess of wires right now. So what I have are 3 negatives, which are right here, and then I have 3 positives. And the positives, the ends are all marked with which one they are. That way I don't lose track of it, because that would be terrible. I'd have to trace down which one they came from. So I'm going to do the negative connections first, just to get those out of the way. And they're basically just going to be the easiest because they run right here to the distribution block. Tell you what, I have had multiple wire strippers. These Irwin vice grip ones are by far the best. Very few times do I have them actually not stripped exactly where I want it to. And it's got this adjustable stop block in there, so you can have them all the exact same length. Again, that will be in the description below as well. Now all I'm left with here are the 3 power wires that are going to the Voswitch, the light bar, the flood, and the driving lights. What I'm going to do is use this side split wire loom, and it's actually really easy to get on and off, and you can add more wires to it. This is really, really good quality stuff. I will also put a link to this in the description. I have been doing a lot of wiring lately, and this has been absolutely invaluable. I'm going to start here at the base, more towards the fender, put all the wires together and put the loom on. That way I can kind of fish it through to my final destination before I make my connections. Now that I got it mostly loomed up, I'm gonna route it down low, kind of right up against the fender, up under all this stuff, and come out up under the Voswitch. All right, time to wire up to the Voswitch. On the back of the lid is gonna be the diagram. So we have switches 1 all the way through 8, working left to right, and that is going to orient this way. So 1 to 8. This is my list of all my functions, that way I don't lose track. Obviously, the front light bar is going to be 3, the doubles are going to be 4, and the fog light's going to be 5. Instead of just putting the bare wire in here, I like using the blades. And with the heat shrink on there, I find it very hard to make these end ones. I have to kind of do this weird angle on each side. So I actually cut the heat shrink in half, hoping that this makes it a little easier just to slide it straight in. The wiring's all done. It's not wrapped up yet. I still have more work to do, but let's see if they work. We have light. Now that is awesome. The lights look absolutely amazing. I'm so stoked on how these came out. However, we're not quite done yet. Do you remember the backlighting for all the C2 lights on the ditch lights and the outsides of the bumper lights? They still have to get wired up. I had an idea of how I was gonna do it, wired it to something that's already in the vehicle. However, it's not gonna work. So I'm going to actually take a different route, and I'm gonna wire it right to the Voswitch on a separate switch. That way I can turn the backlighting on and off as I choose. I won't bore you with that because it's more of the same we've been doing for the last couple days. So I'm just gonna get it done, we'll see if it works. Oh man. That is so slick. It's hot, it's sweaty, time to do something for me, putting the stickers on. And last but not least, zombie. Why? Why not? All right, time to loom up all the wiring on the front bumper lights. All right, you can't tell me that wiring doesn't look amazing. So the real question is, what does 623,000 candela look like? Let's go find out. You guys wanna know how bright these lights are? You guys, oh my God, that is amazing. I cannot believe how much light that is. 623 candela, over 20,000 lumens of light coming out of these lights. I mean, that's just the front, not including the rear or the rock lights. That's just the light projecting out of the front of the truck, not including the headlights. That's just accessory lights. So that is amazing. I cannot believe how awesome these look. It's just, they turned out so cool. And personally, I think Diode Dynamics has just knocked this technology out of the park with these lights. These new backlit C2s are just a really cool light, and you really do get the best of both worlds. You get the white light for the throw, but you got the amber light for the backlight to kind of cool, and also goes with the rest of the light. So yeah, super cool. All right guys, be sure to comment below. I really want to know what you guys think of these lights. And also guys, be sure to check that link in the description below. It will give you every single piece of kit I used to get these lights installed fast and with quality products. I mean, everything I used was a little bit pricey, but it's worth it in the end for the reliability and just knowing that they're gonna work every time you hit those buttons. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, follow us on IG, it's AdventureBuilt_. Be sure to subscribe, it really does help Adventure Built grow. While you're over there, hit that thumbs up, hit the bell for all the notifications, and I'll see you guys next time.